So let's see. Is senior software engineer worth it? And the title is Why Senior Software Engineer Isn't Worth It as an ex-Google tech lead. All right, let's see.
Welcome back, techlead here. Now, before we
Hey man.
we get started today, I have a few quick announcements I wanted to make, just some logistics to take care of, and it is that I just needed to remind you all that I am an ex-Google, ex-Facebook, multi-millionaire tech lead.
That's true. Also, what is
So with that taken care of and out of the way, we can actually get started today. And I wanted to talk about senior software engineering.
I wonder what he has to say about this. Let's try to make a prediction. He said isn't worth it, so obviously he'll try to talk about something like what sucks about being a senior software engineer. What sucks about being a senior software engineer? Let me think. Plenty of the suckage, more added responsibility, have to take care of junior people, and if you're not super social, that fucks you. If you are social, you should be fine. I know I'm fine with most not senior, but junior people whenever I have to talk to them or stuff like that. There are high expectations, so that's a thing. Also, can't think of anything right now, but let's see what techlead has to say.
I get a lot of questions from people who want to figure out how to become a senior software engineer, and sometimes they get into a company, they feel like they're under-leveled and they want to get into as high a level as possible. And especially from my perspective, as somebody who's actually climbed this whole career ladder to staff software engineer, that's about E6, L6 level at Facebook or Google. At FANG, this is in the top, say, 10 to 15% of software engineers at these top tier tech companies. It's a pretty difficult thing to do. It takes probably 10 to 15 years for most people to actually achieve this level. And so I wanted to give you my thoughts on this, the pros and cons of this, and then potentially alternate paths in your life that may be more rewarding. Quick pause, this video is brought to you by Blinkist, one of my favorite apps out there. In today's age, it can
these guys are actually cool. I use that app.
be hard to find the time to sit down.
Also, not sponsored by them. Only techlead is sponsored by them, but you know what I mean.
Read and learn more. It's not easy when social media can be so addictive and time consuming. You may think you don't have the time to read, but that's where the Blinkist app comes in. Blinkist is the only app that takes the best insights and knowledge from thousands of non-fiction books and condenses them into short 15-minute sections that you can read or listen to. Check out the app at blinkist.com/techlead, and I'm getting the first 100 people a free 1-week membership, a link in the description below. Now, one thing to understand is that software engineers, and this may be you, are some of the most prideful and arrogant people on the planet. And
that is correct. I mean, yeah. I see his point. Even he is, so.
So therefore, they always believe that they deserve more, and they always want to go to that next higher level. The thing is, there tends to be a lot of title inflation at a lot of smaller companies. So startups tend to overinflate titles as a means of a non-monetary reward for their employees. And in fact, at many startups, there's no title below senior software engineer, and then there's senior software engineer and senior staff software engineer as well. So therefore, I see many so-called senior software engineers applying into Google or Facebook, and then they seem to get dismayed that they're only being considered for an intern role. So that's the first thing to realize. Everybody's always going after more status, more prestige, but at some point you may reach a point where the rewards aren't going to be worth the effort that you have to put in, right? You may reach a point of diminishing returns, and what I'm trying to get at is that this point of diminishing returns, you may reach it as soon as you've entered a company, right? By the time you get into, say, entry level at Google or Facebook, you're pretty much at that point of diminishing returns, and you may not need to work much harder after that.
Yeah, that's correct. And also, there's a different take on the same perspective that techlead has. You could also run into a situation where the staff, that there's enough staff in a company where you can get into crabs in a bucket sort of situation where in order to advance you have to screw somebody over, or you will basically take the promotion that they want to take as well, and you will be directly competing for that. And that's not a good situation to be in. And also, did I have another idea? I didn't, I guess. Let's go.
You know, when I was working as a staff software engineer, there was an uncomfortable level of expectations on me. It felt like I was just in the spotlight 24/7 and all eyes were always on me. Why?
I kind of nailed that, but that's just common sense, I guess. So if you're an engineer and you don't think there will be super high expectations whenever you get the senior title, you should reconsider that.
Watching my next move, what was I going to do? How was I going to handle a project? And I was expected to stay on top of everything and all of the project status updates from everybody on my team. Even from areas which I didn't have much interest in, I still needed to make sure that I would stay informed on that and make sure that these other engineers on my team who they wanted to call themselves senior software engineers, but they were actually operating at an intern level, I still had to make sure that they would get their work done. And so I would just be busy all the time, often with mundane menial tasks like maybe understanding how logging works for some feature project that we're working on, making sure to clear some technical roadblocks for my team by reading up on some technical wiki on some internal company webpage, or having to schedule meetings with people who didn't really want to talk to me just to make sure that we could all work together.
Yeah, there's a ratio of how much administrative tasks you have to do, right? And at the very start, whenever you're an intern or a junior or even mid-level, that ratio is skewed towards coding, right? You'll spend more time coding than doing administrative tasks, but or research. But whenever you get into the other side, the senior software engineer, how techlead likes to call it, yeah, that ratio will start to skew towards the other way. You'll spend more time researching, you'll spend more time doing God knows what administrative task, or spending time in random meetings, stuff like that. So expect that.
And as a project lead, well, you may be expected to be on call most of the time if there's a crash that happens at night. You kind of want to be there, know what's going on, be ready to respond. The next morning, you have to know all about the crash, what happened, know all about the major issues that are happening in the projects, read up on all the emails. And this could just be a lot of load on you. Maybe it's in the evening, you want to watch 2 Netflix movies back to back, and you can only watch one. Whereas when you compare this lifestyle to that of a entry-level L3, E3 software engineer, just a basic software engineer, like these software engineers get to just cruise. You just do the work you've been assigned, sit back, relax, take your 2-hour lunch breaks. You really only have to put in, say, 4 hours of work a day, maybe even less is okay, surf Reddit sometimes. And when you go home at night and then there's a production bug crash, well, you can just continue watching your Netflix movies because somebody else is going to take care of it. You're not on the hook here. And so that sounds like a pretty nice life to me. And really what's pushing these people further is ego or pride, arrogance. But you have to remember that once you reach, say, the highest level in a video game, for instance, you kind of lose all motivation after that. And so once you get to, say, senior software engineer or staff software engineer, then the race, the hustle to that next level starts all over again. And at some point, you're just going to think this is just too much work. For me, in retrospect, I would say that the staff software engineer level, which is around L6, it's a little bit too much. It's a little bit too much responsibility and a little bit too tiring. And the sweet spot is around L5 senior level. And that's a level where you have a decent amount of autonomy and respect from the peers around you, and yet not too much overbearing responsibility and commitment from outside of your standard 9 to 5 hours. And I would say there's no real rush to get there. You can kind of take your time and enjoy the progression at each level. And in a sense, L3 level, entry level is kind of the best because you can really just cruise, take your time. And what I would really recommend if you're looking for more money, for more prestige, for instance, is maybe just start a side hustle on the side. Right? So instead of putting all of your effort into just the company and trying to up level in that career, in an area where other people are going to make the decision whether you get promoted or not. You can kind of take things into your own control by starting a side hustle where you get to decide how far you're going to advance in this other business that you're working on. Because the thing is that for senior software engineers, oftentimes they're using their own personal time in the evenings, on the weekends, to figure out how to find new initiatives. You know, I'd always be spending my personal...
Yeah, that's also correct. There's there are the working hours where you do your coding stuff and your meeting stuff and your whatever stuff, but basically you'll never know everything that is to know about coding. You'll never know all the technologies at the same time, right? You'll probably be specialized in 1, 2, or 3 programming languages, and there's always some sort of SAS or what have you, some sort of tech stack, some sort of something that you don't know, and you see it that's basically on the docket for maybe not the next project, but within 6 months you'll probably need to use that somehow, and you sort of need to learn it. Or maybe the next project is just some technology you don't have a clue about and you have to learn it, so you will end up using some of your working time and some of your free time to get on top of that, if you really want to get in front of all of these challenges, which could be good because you'll advance in technical areas, but at the same time, you know, there are always some trade-offs to any approach you take to this, right? Because say you just decide to hardline the 9 to 5, right? Then you will probably advance slower than some of your peers who aren't doing that. And you have to basically decide for yourself if you want to advance faster or not. If you want to advance faster, then yeah, the trade-off is you'll probably have to give up some of your free time for training or learning or what have you. And if you're good with going slower, then that's awesome. I mean, whatever floats your boat in the end.
Time digging through the company code base or looking around the internet for open source projects where I can come up with ideas for new initiatives. And imagine if I just took all of that time that I would put into these other areas and put it into my own side hustle during that time. I could probably have built up another business.
Also, techlead, to be fair, is correct. You should consider starting a side hustle or moving somehow towards your objective from a different angle, right? Not just the job angle. Pretty much it's always, if you're a software engineer, you should understand the value of backups or redundancies. So a side hustle is just that, a redundancy.
On the side right there. Not to mention, oftentimes when you're working at a company, it can be difficult to find the proper project for the proper impact that you're looking at to take you to that next promotion level. Like for example, when I was working at Facebook, Facebook itself is already a very mature product, so it can be difficult to find areas that you can improve on. All of the performance optimizations, network optimizations, or low-hanging fruit for project ideas features, most of them are already in there, and then anything else that's left, it can be hairy, complex features that span a whole areas that could take weeks or months to really put in. And the thing is, the higher level you go, the bigger project it is you need to find. You can no longer just create little features or buttons. Most of that work is for, say, L3, L4 level software engineers. And by the time you're senior, you really need to start taking on these bigger, meatier, architectural type of projects that span multiple features and pages and maybe across multiple teams. And that could involve a lot of work that you may not necessarily enjoy, like harassing other people, hassling other team members, trying to dig up information from people, maybe refactoring some terrible piece of code that's really ancient. And you want to keep in mind that
yeah, the refactoring and taking care of the already existing infrastructure is a sore subject for many and is a must, unfortunately, if you work at a bigger company, because God knows what's going on in there. Like, you may be at some point you'll probably hit some piece of code that has been written like 10 to 15 years ago in some obsolete tech that is no longer used as the last bastion of that tech inside that company, and they don't want to refactor it or change it because pretty much everyone who worked on that is no longer working at the company, right? It's just like, I don't know, man, that piece of code works and we don't even remember who made it, but we know it works, so just leave it be. And you may be the lucky duck who has to you know take care of that at some point.
Although levels may be important for people within a company in order to distinguish themselves from outside the company, people just see that you're working at some company, some big brand name, right? Like you work at Qualcomm, Intel, Facebook, Google, whatever. And the level or the role or the team is really almost something secondary, right? Like if I see somebody coming from Microsoft, that's just ex-Microsoft. Not to mention, I've also found that at higher levels, you become more of a target. And this was especially true at Facebook, where people on other teams, they look to you and they try to come after you, to harass you, to figure out ways to take you down, because it's going to make themselves look a little bit better if they're able to take down a senior member of some other team.
Yeah, crabs in a bucket, like I said. It's just that shit happens, especially in larger companies.
I found myself having to deal with more conflict between my team and other teams, especially in technical discussions where, well, I would have to be the representative speaking on behalf of my team because nobody else was going to do that. So overall, at least the way I see things is that there's definitely value to working at a company, but most of that value can be had simply by gaining access into the company walls. And you don't necessarily have to climb that career ladder all the way up, because simply by being there, you're able to gain access to the excellent health insurance that a company provides. And health insurance is a big thing in the US at least. And then after that, maybe the company offers you
Health insurance is good wherever you live, so, not only in the US.
life insurance, maternity benefits, or paternity benefits, right? You could just have a bunch of kids and just take a bunch of time off after that, right? And just keep having kids and taking time off. And that could just be a really great lifestyle in and of itself. When you compare the lifestyle differences of, say, an entry-level software engineer and then a senior engineer, well, everybody's pretty much doing the same stuff, right? People are going to the same local bars, same restaurants. People are living in the same areas, shopping at the same supermarkets, going to the same company parties, using the same internal tools, the same company-issued laptops and hardware. And maybe the only difference is that senior software engineers are driving a Tesla because, hey, they need to maintain their status, whereas you get to drive a Honda Civic, and maybe they're ordering a steak for dinner, takeout, which comes back home cold and soggy, whereas you're ordering like a pizza and some custom hamburgers. And the thing is, in either case, nobody can really comfortably afford a house, at least not in a tech hub like, say, Silicon Valley, where houses start at, say, 1.5 to 2 million just for something basic in a decent school district. In order for that type of money, a lot of these people, they have to be like startup founders or start up some side business to really get to a comfortable level like that, I would say. Or maybe like a double income family or something like that. Which is why I advocate a side hustle. Like a basic side hustle can easily start bringing in pretty decent income, especially you can start taking off tax write-offs as well. And it can take you into, say, L5, L6, L7 territory quite quickly. And then you use that employment as a way to provide for your basic lifestyle, your health insurance, your social status, maybe your network, your friends, your work colleagues, and then that resume building and career building. Now, if you're looking to learn more, whether that's to develop yourself to start a new side hustle or to go after that promotion, then I recommend checking out the Blinkist app. Blinkist is the only app that takes the best insights, the need-to-know information from thousands of non-fiction books and condenses them down into just 15. That'll do for me, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on climbing the career ladder. Link in the description below. So that'll do for me, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on climbing the career ladder, and at what point do you think we reach diminishing returns, where the additional gains in, say, monetary reward or respect from our peers just isn't going to be worth the additional required time, effort, and responsibilities, that additional stress that comes with the role. If you liked the video, please give a like and subscribe. Really appreciate that, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.
All right, so let's give it a like. And to answer techlead question, when do you hit the point of diminishing returns? I guess it depends on how you planned and what you want to achieve, right? That's a main thing. Because you could consider this path, right? You just go as you start as a basic engineer, whatever, just normal level. No, I'll not use the L whatevers from the big companies, because I don't think everyone works at the FANG, right? Yeah, so you just start off as a normal engineer. Maybe you go into the mid senior territory, but at some point you'll either have to move to a staff engineer, right, position, or at that point you could just stop coding. You can switch paths if you're in a medium to large company to a more managerial path where you become sort of a what have you, whatever manager. That could be a path. Also, if you do want to go for the staff engineer, I guess techlead is right, and you will start hitting those diminishing returns, because the level of expectations when compared to what you get out of it will be out of balance at that point. So you won't be able to maintain sanity for long, I guess. And you'll probably end up quitting and moving to another company or something, or taking a sabbatical or what have you, because in larger companies, at least, the projects just keep going. I mean, they're just next, where you have another project, and so on and so forth. But guess what? You'll be working on the new project, but you will also be maintaining and sort of coming up with new stuff, or upgrading the older ones. And the longer you spend at the company and you've become maybe a senior or whatever, you'll have a pretty large portfolio of applications you worked on. And that means whenever there's a problem, somebody will contact you and tell you, or some product owner will contact you and say, hey, I have an idea, how can we implement this? And you'll have to research it, and so on and so forth. And you'll basically end up not coding at all, even though you're a senior staff engineer. You'll just be doing some research and telling your team what's going to happen, and then I guess rest of the time is spent into meetings. So yeah, that's my take on it.